Hey guys, what's up? It's Alec Torelli. Welcome back to a episode of Ask Alec, where I take your questions and answer them here in short videos. Before watching this, if you're new to Conscious Poker, it's the best place to take your game to the next level with new strategy videos I put out every week about the hand of the day, hands that are famous from all over the world that are interesting from various tournaments, or hands that I play in televised games as well, or answering your questions. The Conscious Poker YouTube is the best place to learn poker. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss another video. Without further ado, let's jump in. This question was inspired by several of you that reached out to me about chopping in tournaments and deal making because of Phil Hellmuth made a deal with 5 people left in the Mega Millions at the bike. And one of the greatest tournament players ever, you wouldn't really expect that. Why would he make a deal with 5 people left? And I don't want to get into the specifics of him making the deal, but it was just the inspiration for this video. So I wanted to talk about deal making in general, and when is a good time to do it, some things to consider, and some important factors that you must know. First off, deal making in tournaments basically means to chop up the remainder of the prize pool and divide it based on the stack size. Usually all the players have to agree, and always all the players have to agree, but there's not a specific amount that each player gets. It's kind of up for negotiation. So the way that you determine, but there is a way to determine exactly what your value of your stack is at that current moment based on the other stack sizes and the prize pool. This is called ICM, independent chip models that can determine this. And without getting into all the fancy math of ICM specifically, it basically allows you to determine the value of your stack based on the payouts and your stack size and relative to the other stacks. So you can plug all that information into an ICM calculator and it will tell you exactly what your stack is worth. Now, it is super important to know this, or to at least be aware roughly of what this is, or even if you're taking a break in a tournament to discuss a deal, to run the ICM calculation so that you don't come up short. ICM is not something that is enforced by the tournament director. They're not going to just tell you, hey, your stack is worth this much. They may or may not do that, but you have to be responsible for your own deal making. You're making a deal, right? A deal means that people agree on something. So everyone's going to take the best price they can get. That's just the way the world works, obviously. So you have to be responsible for yourself and your own information and knowing what your stack is worth. So it's important to be familiar with that and how ICM works and how chip stack values change based on the payouts and how your stack increases and decreases. Now, we don't have time to go into all the strategies of ICM, but if you're playing tournament poker and you want to excel, the decisions you make at the final table are the most important. There's the difference between 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd is where all the money is. And you want to make sure that you're making decisions not based on the expectation of your chips, but based on the expectation of ICM. Now, this is something I talk about in a lot more detail in the membership at Conscious Poker, which is available for a free trial at the link below. Click that if you want to learn more. It's outside the scope of this video, but it's important that you're playing tournament strategy based on ICM. It's also important in deal making. So make sure that you know what your ICM value is of your chip stack before you make a deal. Once you have that baseline number, then you could start to think about whether you are better than the other players and you perhaps deserve more than the ICM, or whether you are willing to gamble to potentially get more money or chase your expectation at the risk of potentially getting last place. So let's say in this example, there's 5 people left in a tournament. 5th place is 100,000 and 1st place is 500,000. So let's say the value of your stack is 250. Now, if you make a deal, you can lock up the 250, which may be 2nd or 3rd place prize money. But if you gamble, you might get 5th and lose. Sure, you might get 1st and win, but you want to think about your worst case scenario and be comfortable accepting that before you decide to not make a deal. And typically you want to make a deal if you can't afford the variance. A lot of times in tournament poker, sorry, there's a fly here. Tilting. A lot of times in tournament poker, people can't afford the variance. People are playing for an amount that's significant amount of money to their life situation or their bankroll. And that's a very good time to make a deal. Even if you have, let's say, like a 10% edge. So you make a deal, your chip stack's worth 250 from an ICM standpoint, but you know that you're better than ICM. You're better than average. So your chip stack is worth like 275. So you're like, well, I'm giving up 25,000 by making this deal. I want to play it out. and chase my EV. That's fine if you can afford the variance. If you can afford getting 100,000 instead of 500 and you run this simulation 50 or 100 times, chasing your EV makes sense. But when you're running a simulation one time, locking up that win is super important to your life situation, because for most people, the difference between 100,000 and 250 is life-changing. It's a lot of money. And gambling to chase a 25,000 EV when 150,000 is on the line is not worth it for most people, because your EV is not worth the variance, because that money is so important. If you reduce 3 zeros off the number and you're talking about $100 versus $250, you'd probably want to gamble because you're like, well, I can afford the variance. So you really want to think about your life situation and your bankroll and if you can afford to take these sorts of risks. And I find personally in tournament poker that people overestimate their edge and they underestimate the variance. So people overestimate their edge and they underestimate the variance. The variance is way higher than you think, especially when you're playing with these small stack sizes. Like, if you play a $500 buy-in tournament, $1,000 buy-in tournament, you're at the final table, the average stack is 25, 30 big blinds. How much edge do you really have? I mean, sure, you have some edge, but if you get, a paired ace-queen, you're going to get it all in, and so is your opponent. So you're both going to play the hand the same way. The cards are going to dictate the action a large percentage of the time. If you're at the main event final table, you'd probably want to make a deal because the money is so significant. But if you're in a format like the main event where the average stack is 80 big blinds and the blinds go up every 2 hours, okay, your edge is very big in that spot, and that's something to consider. But typically in tournaments, especially smaller stake buy-ins, edges are small, variance is extremely high, and the amount of money at stake is life-changing or very significant to a lot of people's bankroll. And those three things are factors which should lead you to want to make a deal. Now, as for making a deal in terms of bargaining, obviously, you have to know what your ICM is worth. Otherwise, you're just shooting blind. You have no idea what your chip stack's worth. You're just guessing. So you have to be able to run the sims and know what your ICM is worth. But once you do that, of course, if it's possible to bargain in any way possible to get better than ICM, that's totally fair game. It's like you're selling your house, you're going to sell it for as much as possible, and you're going to try and show people the beauty of your home to raise the price. Everything is like that in life. That's totally normal. You go to a flea market in Turkey, there's a rug they're selling you, and the guy says 100 and you say 70. The rug is worth whatever you guys agree on. That's what the rug is worth. Your chip stack, your deal-making ability in poker is worth what everyone else will agree on. So if you can get them to agree that your chip stack is worth more than ICM because you're better, fine. If other people are really wanting to make a deal and they're scared of the variance, and you can see they're very eager to make a deal, and you seem indifferent to making a deal, you can use that as leverage to try and get better than what the value of your chips are worth. This is all totally normal. It's fair game. So obviously you want to negotiate as well as you can, but you have to know what your chip stack is worth in order to make deals. So it's a nuanced approach, right? Every situation is different. In summary, the less often you're going to be in these spots, the more the money is worth to you, the more important it is to you. The smaller the stacks are, the less the edges are, the more you're going to want to make a deal in these spots and lock up the win. I find what's cool in deal making is you always are going to leave something to play for. So it's not like deal making ruins tournament poker or people don't have incentive to win. Obviously, people want to win. Everyone wants to win. People play tournaments largely for not necessarily the money, but the glory of winning. And when you leave, let's say you leave 20% of the prize pool on the table, like you say, okay, we're going to make a deal with 5 people left, but we're going to leave an additional 20,000 for first, 15,000 for second, 10,000 for third. Everybody is extremely incentivized to get those top positions, as incentivized as they were if you didn't make a deal, because they want to win that money. They want to get first place in the tournament. So I don't think it ruins tournament poker. I think it's a smart thing to do. I think checking ego at the door and thinking deeply about these situations is an important way to navigate deal making in tournament poker. But I would love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to leave them in a comment below. Let me know, do you make deals in tournament? What do you think about deal making in tournament poker? Should it be allowed? And should it be enforced by the tournament itself? Should the tournament tell you, what your ICM is worth, what your chip stack is worth? Or is that something that should be up to the players to know? My opinion is it should be up to the players. I think it's part of the skill set of tournament poker. I like the idea that you can negotiate what your stack is worth and it goes to whoever's the highest bidder, so to speak. I think that's a good way to do it. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Leave your thoughts in a comment below. I'll see you guys on the next episode of Ask Alec.